Hi there, I hope you have been having a fantastic day. Well, hasn't 2020 been a doozy so far? One thing it definitely has done has brought a worldwide focus to the essential value of our health. And it's something that we may have taken for granted up until now. And as our daily pace of life is really starting to slow down a little bit as we're all sort of moving into self-isolation, it really is giving us a little bit more time and the ability to reevaluate what our personal values are, along with our priorities and our focus. And I'm guessing, I'm not saying it's going to be everyone's, but in everyone's top three, family and health are going to be in most people's top three values. So I have a question for you. Have you actually changed or altered anything in your diet or your lifestyle to ensure that you are healthier? Or are you still unsure what you need to be doing, and unsure how you should be strengthening and increasing your own immunity? Now, if you're looking for tips to help and to become healthier and strengthen your immune system, you're definitely in the right place right now. And lucky for us today, we're speaking with Jennifer May, Principal Nutritionist and Director of Sydney City Nutrition and Food Intolerance Australia, who's going to share her top three tips for improving immunity, along with a whole heap of other good stuff. Now, Jennifer has a Bachelor of Health Science, majoring in nutritional medicine. In her 9 years of practice, Jennifer has helped thousands of patients to recover from burnout, chronic health conditions, stress, trauma, and has worked with many major corporations to assist the health and well-being needs of their employees. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, and I'm really, really grateful for your time, so thank you for joining us. So I've been doing my research, and I can sort of see it's been said that you personally take like a holistic approach to health and well-being in assisting patients to achieve their optimum health, which is something that we all really need at the moment. We've got lots to talk about the article. We've got our other key questions, but I just wanted to ask you straight away, what do you actually see and why do you see dietary and lifestyle changes being so crucial for us right at this point in time right now?
Good question. I think health and well-being is always really important, but we often are very distracted, I feel, by our never-ending to-do list, work, family, and the juggle of it all. But a crisis like this really brings it to the forefront of your mind, doesn't it? That health is irreplaceable, and that we're not.
Yes.
We are. There is a finite thing to our health, and to our lives, in fact. And not trying to make light of that at all, but just that we do take so much for granted, as you've said. And in response to this particular virus, we know the research has shown us, the numbers are consistently showing that most young and healthy people are going to experience very mild symptoms. And while the category of mild for some means that it will feel like a flu, which doesn't feel particularly mild, it's not like a mild cold. For others, they may even be asymptomatic. But for a lot of people with chronic health conditions, with asthma even, or chronic lung issues, people who are recovering from other pneumonias and other infections, people recovering from cancer or currently undergoing therapy for cancer, and of course the elderly as well. And, for all of these people, they're so much more vulnerable. And what this does mean is not only do we have to think about our actions in order to prevent any unnecessary spread to these people, but we also need to think of the load that we're placing on the healthcare system as well. And the more resilience that we place, or build rather, by maintaining a healthy diet, by having some healthy lifestyle practices each day as well, so that we are as healthy as possible, our immune system is as strong as possible, the less likely we're going to need critical care, which means that we really help to prevent an overload on our health system, which is really, really important because the health system could collapse, and we've seen this in other countries.
Yes.
So the benefit for Australians is that we're getting this so much later than everybody else. We've learned from other countries. So the government has already been able to put in practical strategies to help to protect us, but we as individuals should do the same. And we should really preventatively put in place measures to build our immunity and keep us healthy and strong before the virus hits.
Very, very powerful message, and beautifully put in sort of others first. Well, not others first, but equally we're all in this together. So we do need to be looking after ourselves. So given that if anybody else needs critical care, that they have the ability, and our immune systems hopefully would be strong enough to be able to at least get us through to fight it. Yeah.
Absolutely. We need our hospitals to be free for those who have no choice.
Yes. Yeah, beautifully put. So we've published your article, How to Protect Yourself and Your Family in the COVID-19 Era. For someone who hasn't read the article, can you please give us an overview of what it's about and what inspired you to write it?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I'll be honest, when I first heard the news about this virus, I didn't think that it was as important as it, or as detrimental as it has become. You know, we often see in media that things can be blown out of proportion. And that we can be trained to think differently about world events, you know, and with healthcare issues, that's definitely, with health conditions and sicknesses, that's definitely the case. So in the beginning, this seemed like something that would probably blow over. It certainly was a very urgent problem in China, but I expected that they would deal with it there, and that the other countries may have some overflow, but, you know, that most cases would be mild. I absolutely didn't expect it to become a worldwide pandemic. So when things became so urgent, and the fact that they started to escalate so quickly, and we've seen this day to day, everything changes. You know, even myself, I've gone from working in an office face to face with patients to realizing that that's absolutely not appropriate. And that change happened for me overnight. So, you know, our lifestyles are very much changing, and I really wanted to make sure that I covered a couple of things. One, first of all, putting things a little bit in perspective, that it isn't hard to build your immune system. It's not complicated. It doesn't require really expensive items, you know, but also that the importance of really basic ingredients. So in the article, I've tried to cover the most important dietary tips that people can incorporate every day. And you'll see, and we'll talk about it more today, that some of them are just really simple ingredients and everyday things that we use. But I guess for people to understand more the background of that, I also make sure that I scientifically referenced every one of them, because there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yes.
And I didn't want to become part of that. So I made sure that everything was referenced, that people could understand and rely on the source as well of information. And then also, I guess, for me, I think one of the scariest things about this time is that we all feel so vulnerable and we all feel so out of control. And for me, with my patients, the most important thing is that they feel in control of their own health. So every bit of advice I ever give is always backed up with an explanation, because I want people to not just know what to do, but why to do it.
Yes.
And therefore also know how to modify the approach when needed as well.
Yes.
So that's what we try to achieve.
And look, a lot of us live busy, hectic, crazy lifestyles, and possibly not healthy lifestyles at all. So making the switch whilst we are slowing down to all of a sudden focus so much on our health and so much on our immune systems may be a big shock and a big shift for a lot of people from this go, stress, crazy, to slowing down and all of a sudden, okay, I do need to focus on my health. So if people are really unsure where to start, what would you suggest would be that first change, that first step that they really can do right away today that could help strengthen their innate immunity? So the question is really, what would be your advice where they could just start?
Yeah, it's a really good question as well. And it's funny, actually, when I wrote my book, we're in completely different circumstances, mind you, but I wrote out an 8-week step-by-step program. I must say, at that point, I wasn't the mum of a 1-year-old. Once I became the mum of a young child, while also running 2 businesses, I looked at my own program and thought, wow, there's a lot of information in there. I don't think I'd have time to read it. So certainly with this article, I tried to simplify even more, you know. And your question really, really is important, because What I always try to talk about with people is it's so important to understand where you are today. So don't think of yourself as the same person from 2 to 3 weeks ago who went to the gym 3 times a week and ate out at your favorite cafe once a day. You know, often when I do dietary recalls with people and I say, what does a general day look like? Even now, they'll still say, oh, you know, I get this salad from this place and I snack on these things, but actually that's not the reality anymore. So for whatever reasons, if your circumstances have changed, just really make sure that when you're putting together your action plan, that you absolutely take stock of where you're at right now. And if that means that you're currently craving all kinds of junk food because you're comfort eating to deal with the stress, well, that's where you need to begin. And then it's just a step-by-step approach. So something really easy that we can all do, you've just done it, drink some water and drink as much water as you can throughout the day. I mean, don't go crazy. We don't want to be drinking 5 or 6 liters, but we certainly should be aiming to have 2 to 3. Our lungs need a lot of water for the tissue to remain flexible, and that's really important. And it's important also for general injury prevention. And I hope that a lot of people start taking exercise at home, or, you know, even going out for a little run while we're allowed to do so. But while we're looking at any sort of muscle, whether it's the muscles that contract and expand the lungs, or the heart for that matter, or whether it's other larger muscles that we use for movement, the maintenance of that flexible tissue is heavily reliant on the availability of water. So 2 liters as a minimum each day has a really powerful effect. And that also maintains optimum digestion, which means that you have better absorption of nutrients, which means that every food you put into your body will be better absorbed. But not only that, when you're craving junk foods, usually for a lot of people, you might just be dehydrated and you're craving sugar because that's the easiest way to flood a cell with water, is to put sugary water into your system, and that will get into a cell more easily, as will salty water, right? So when we're eating something really, really salty and then having a drink afterwards, usually we'll absorb that water much more effectively. So sometimes these junk food cravings are just that we're a bit more dehydrated due to the change in routine. And I think that that's probably the most powerful thing to begin with. After that, there's so many more dietary changes, and we'll talk about more of those simple ones today. But if I was to say the second most important thing as a first step for those who have already really mastered that, drinking plenty of water each day and have made it a focus for some time, it's the vegetables. Vegetables and fresh fruit provide us with all of the essential nutrients that our immune system needs. And we'll go through some of the specifics of that today. But really, if we're looking at what is the most nutritionally dense food source that provides high amounts of antioxidants, vitamins, minerals, it's our fresh fruits and vegetables. And when we say fresh fruits and veggies, it's okay to have your frozen ones too. Yes. You know, sometimes you just have to go with what's available.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, get stuck into question number 2, because I'm really eager to hear the answer to this. Understanding that COVID-19 is a virus that does attack our respiratory system. So question number 2, is there anything specific to the lungs is there anything specific to the lungs which we should be eating on a regular basis to help us fight this virus?
Well, there certainly is. So with this particular virus, what has actually been proven is that it's not the same as other types of pneumonias. So when we think of pneumonia, we always think of fluid buildup in the lung, mucus production that builds up in the lung, and that's true of bacterial pneumonias and some viral. But with this particular viral pneumonia, what happens is the cells are damaged, and there's an inflammatory process that happens from our own immune system, which is overactive in this case because of the virus, that actually destroys the tissue. And from that inflamed and damaged tissue, we're unable to draw in breath, and we're unable to transit oxygen through the lung. So as a result of this, we can't get enough oxygen to any of our essential tissues, including the brain, which of course is why it's so risky. So the most important foods would be our anti-inflammatory foods. Now, beetroot has a long history of being associated with better lung function, and I absolutely love beetroot because, yeah, absolutely. And I love this one because it's such a good all-rounder, because beetroot also is a healthy carbohydrate. It's very energizing, and actually the reason it's energizing is also the reason that it's good for the lungs, because it opens up the capillaries and the airways. So the little bronchioles open up and function more appropriately. It's also an anti-inflammatory food, which, as I've said just now, is so important for this particular virus. Now, something really practical that I want everybody to think about, which also comes back to that first question you asked: what is the role of nutrition and the importance of nutrition and diet and well-being in general? What you want to think about is, when we see some sort of injury or some sort of major reaction happen, often the worst reactions happen from something very small. So a person bends over to pick up a pen and they go, oh, I injured my back. How did that happen? Picking up a pen. It wasn't the pen or even bending over to pick up the pen that did it. It was some level of dysfunction that was present for quite some time, and then that was the tipping point. So for those who are experiencing really major critical symptoms and requiring critical care because of this virus, it's because of the tipping point. So the virus being that tipping point, with their underlying health conditions being the initial cause, if that makes sense. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we've resolved as much underlying inflammation as possible. And the inflammation may be there due to just a generally unhealthy diet, just not getting enough fruits and vegetables, not eating enough protein, maybe not moving your bowels frequently enough. If your bowels don't work frequently, if you're not emptying the waste that way, it has to come out by other means. So we see increased waste products exiting through the lungs and through the skin. All of our detoxification pathways have to work harder. So, little things like that can add to that inflammatory storm that's underlying. Type 2 diabetes, another good example. There's elevated inflammation throughout all tissues with type 2 diabetes, which is why they're more at risk. Those with elevated blood pressure, particularly if they're on ACE inhibitors, those same receptors that this controls, therefore regulating blood pressure, are in the lungs. So this is why older people, particularly those who are on ACE inhibitors, they do suffer worse complications from this virus because of that medication. Now, it's important that nobody stops their medication, and do not do that. That's not the message here. The message here is that this virus and similar ones are going to be with us for some time. And so what we need to do is we need to strengthen our innate immunity, yes. We also need to look towards treating underlying health conditions as naturally as possible to minimize complications. And when we look at anti-inflammatory foods, beetroot I gave you as one example. That's, like I said, very good for the lungs, does improve oxygenation of tissues, not only opening up the lungs so that you draw more oxygen in, but opening up the capillaries so we deliver more oxygen through the blood to the essential tissues. And there's other anti-inflammatory foods that are very good too. So garlic is a great example, which has other benefits that we'll come back to. Pineapple is a fantastic example, and I'm sure we'd all be very happy to have an excuse to eat a bit more pineapple. Papaya, pawpaw, kiwi. And apples have a really special role here because apples are also a natural antihistamine. They've got a substance in them called quercetin. So if you are an asthmatic or just an allergy sufferer, again, that weakens the tissue in the lungs and adds to that inflammatory storm, which then could mean that the virus is the tipping point, meaning that you have worse symptoms and worse complications from it. So controlling your allergies. If you're asthmatic, of course, take your medication. If you have severe allergies and you've been prescribed a daily antihistamine, of course, take that too. We're not trying to supersede that in any way. But the antihistamine foods like onion and apple, sorry, I lost it for a second. Those two foods have that really special role to play there in that they do bring down that histamine response, which could actually assist in better overall lung function, which leads therefore to better resilience if you are exposed to the virus. And while we can't guarantee anything given that this is so new and we're still learning about it, the more we can do naturally to protect our health and boost our immunity and reduce inflammation, the better the outcome is expected to be. Does that all make sense?
Yes. Quick question about the ability for people to be able to access fresh fruit and vegetables. As a lot of us love to be able to have either pineapple or beetroot sometimes in burgers and all kinds of things, and a lot of the time those things we have access to that via in a can. So can I ask your opinion, is it the same dietary nutritional value in canned beetroot and pineapple as opposed to fresh, or not at all?
No, there definitely is. I mean, there's going to always be a slight reduction in nutrients available anytime a food has been altered in any way. So even if we've got a whole beetroot fresh at home and then we cut it and then we put it into the fridge for a few hours, already the nutrients are starting to be lost. So, you know, beetroot in a can has been cut and then placed into the can. But once it's in the can and it's sealed, the nutrient value is pretty well maintained. The key thing to look out for with both the pineapple and the beetroot is what is it preserved in. So ideally, you want it to be in something very natural, no preservatives, chemical preservatives, that is, and hopefully not in sugar water either. Because what we don't want to be doing, we know, and I think I talk about this in my article actually, about sugar playing a dual role in this particular case, this virus. Because one, sugar does seem to deplete the energy of the white blood cells. But other studies have shown that we actually need some available sugar. So the message from all of that research really was that it's important for us to still make sure that we are eating regularly and often, and we shouldn't go sugar-free. This is not the time to do that. And that sugar isn't bad for our immune system, but excess sugar, artificial sugars, processed sugars, I mean, those types of sugars are very detrimental, and any large dose of sugar could be very detrimental, albeit temporary, and particularly if it's just that one-off, you know, you've had a little bit of chocolate to, you know, try and brighten your day, you know, of course that's fine, but it's when that negative impact is consistent and regular that this starts to have a much greater impact.
Yes.
So I think with the lungs, the last most important thing would be the nutrient magnesium. And if you are suffering any tightness, any shortness of breath, and if this is something that's common for you, if it isn't, please get checked, you know, call the COVID helpline and make sure that you've had the proper medical advice. But if it is something that's quite chronic for you, then having foods that are rich in magnesium is definitely a really good choice. And if you've got the access to it, then a magnesium supplement is usually a very good choice also. Yeah. That can really help to open up the airways. And again, magnesium is actually used for every muscle relaxation. So even as I do this, I'm using calcium here and then magnesium there to relax those muscles. And as I do that again, that's magnesium relaxing these muscles and calcium contracting these. If we don't have, and of course that happens in every muscle throughout the body, including when we speak, you know, and muscles around our mouth. So to control the lungs and to ensure that the lungs are not seized up or cramped, as we see with magnesium deficiency, all muscles get that little bit tighter and lose their elasticity. So with good amounts of magnesium, and there's a few brands out there that I particularly like. I can mention them if you want me to, or leave it general otherwise.
If you want me to, that would be great.
Yeah, okay. So Ethical Nutrients is a fantastic one that's over the counter and broadly available. They also, I believe, do some online delivery, but I'm not sure. If they're not yet, I believe they're at least trying to aim to do that quite soon. But they're available in all pharmacies, Priceline, and, you know, lots of places like that. So Ethical Nutrients has one called Mega Magnesium. And having 2 of those capsules at night is fantastic. And that's got other beneficial nutrients in there that also helps to prevent the progression of type 2 diabetes and to help to naturally control blood sugar too. So you're kind of hitting it from both angles there. As asthmatics, regular intake of magnesium and high magnesium foods, which by the way includes leafy greens, including things like broccoli, our raw nuts and seeds, Cacao is an excellent source. So yes, a little bit of dark chocolate here and there is okay, but also add a tablespoon of cacao into your smoothie if you've got some. And then also the beetroot, again, very, very good source of magnesium, which is probably one of the reasons that it's so, so therapeutic for the lungs.
As well. Wonderful. That information is gold. So thank you for that. Let's get into question number 3. What do you think is the biggest dietary challenge during the lockdown?
Yeah, this is going to evolve, isn't it? I think what I'm seeing at the moment, so I'm still doing consultations at the moment. I'm doing my virtual consultations, and this week has been absolutely crazy. I'm definitely seeing an increased need for patient care at the moment for a variety of reasons. And the initial change that seems to happen is comfort eating. So all of our regular things that we do for pleasure, for relaxation, for an endorphin release, it's all gone, including our normal means of exercise. So for a lot of people, that combined with the increased stress of the situation, worrying about vulnerable loved ones and the economic situation and worrying about, your children and trying to homeschool them and juggling everything, there's a lot going on. Yes. So naturally, you're going to turn towards those foods that do boost endorphins. And junk foods are really, really good at doing that. I mean, there's food scientists that are paid a lot of money to create a perfect product that is highly addictive and makes you feel a rush of endorphins immediately after eating it. So yes, that is valuable medicine in itself, and we shouldn't be too restrictive on ourselves. There's enough restrictions placed on us as a country. A little treat here and there is okay. But what you'll notice when you start to comfort eat is that initially it does fill that void and it does make you feel a sense of relief. You get the endorphin release, you feel fantastic. But the more you consume junk foods, the less you enjoy them, the less of that endorphin release you do get, and the less and less and less healthy foods, less attractive, healthy foods become. And that is then where you get caught up in a vicious cycle, because every healthy food tastes disgusting or has no flavor. Your digestive system may respond negatively to it as well, because the more you put unhealthy foods into your system, particularly if they're very, very greasy with oxidized oils that have been used during deep frying, things that are very heavily seasoned, things that have a lot of processed sugar. This feeds a lot of the unhealthy bacteria in our digestive system. And the healthy bacteria doesn't do so well in this situation. Now, the healthy bacteria is really important for our immunity, but it's also important for the breakdown, digestion, and absorption of healthy foods too. This is why, and by the way, this change happens in just 3 days. Almost as quick as the COVID changes in itself. So if you can imagine, let's say you have a weekend where you say, I'm just going to eat whatever I feel like this weekend. I'm going to make myself feel better. I'm just going to eat all the junk food. And then by Monday, you're thinking, what on earth has happened? All I can think about now is junk food, yet I feel disgusting. I'm tired. I'm blocked up. I've maybe got reflux, indigestion, and maybe wheezing as well for asthmatics, that tightness in the chest. This isn't good. This is not a good situation to be in, yet all you can think about is eating more and more junk food. And this is because by this point, the unhealthy bacteria is telling you what to eat. And the healthy bacteria is so depleted that even if you choose to override those messages, as you start to consume healthy foods, you'll feel bloated and full and gassy. And all of us have experienced that, where you've been on a really good run and then you've had a weekend off and then you go, oh, what have I done? I've completely destroyed it now and I've got such a bigger hill to climb. So I think the key message with our comfort eating, and this is going to be the biggest challenge we do face because it's our last remaining resource for pleasure. So really, I think the most important thing is to remember that treats are okay and you are allowed to have them. Just make sure that any treat is in addition to your healthy foods. Have a healthy, balanced diet, full of immune-boosting foods, full of very nutritionally dense foods, and then your treats can be on top of that. If you've consumed a really well-balanced and healthy lunch, and then you have a couple of squares of chocolate, hopefully dark chocolate, because then you've got the magnesium as well. If you've had that after your lunch, and then you carry on drinking your water, having a green tea between meals, at dinner time, you're probably going to be just as happy eating another healthy meal. But if you ate half a block of that dark chocolate after your lunch, you've overconsumed, you've disrupted your microbiome, that's the good and bad bacteria in your digestive system, and you've now driven that need for that dopamine release, that addiction, that addictive tendency towards those junky foods. That's going to mean that dinner is going to be very unsatisfying. You'll eat it because you have to. And just like a child, all the way through that meal, you're going to be thinking, when is my next slice of cake? When is my next chocolate? So it's really just about maintaining healthy habits. And when you do have treats, have them, enjoy them, relish them, but keep them small.
Yes.
And that way you don't do harm.
It's almost like break up food, isn't it? We're sort of breaking up with the way that our lives were, and and
Yeah.
it is that sort of staying home on the couch and feeling a little bit sorry for ourselves at the moment.
Yes.
But
Absolutely.
everything in balance and moderation. Well, Jennifer, look, we're so grateful for the information you've given us today. It's really insightful. There's a lot of information in the article. Once again, we'll have a link to that at the bottom of the introduction paragraph, how to protect yourself and your family in the COVID-19 era. It's got 3 top tips within that, with lots of information in each of them. But if after the article and after this interview today and our chat today, if anyone watching's got any other questions and they want to reach out to you, whereabouts can they find you?
Yeah, thanks. So anybody can reach out either at Sydney City Nutritionist, so that's sydneycitynutritionist.com. Or my other organisation is Food Intolerance Australia. That one's a bit more specific to food intolerances. We do testing and support, virtual support, funnily enough, that's become very relevant now. But we do that Australia-wide. Sydney City Nutritionist is the website for my clinic in the city. However, we now, as we always have patients from all over Australia and have virtual services available, including testing as well for those who need it. And I'm absolutely happy to take any queries. So please do reach out if you need extra support. And I should mention, actually, because I've seen so much economic destruction and so many people losing their jobs, I'm actually now starting to run some very low-cost courses as well, like group coaching courses for those people who really need some motivation and support, but don't have the finances to work with a nutritionist one-on-one. So please do reach out if that's suitable for you as well.
Yep, provide us with the links. We'll put it at the bottom of the introduction paragraph. We'd love to do that. Well, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. I really hope we have another opportunity to chat with you, not knowing how long we're going to be in isolation now as well. But I'm so grateful for your time, and take care, and we'll hopefully speak with you soon. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye.